So in my case, there was a total incongruence between what formed in my brain and what formed in my body because of socialization, how people look at when someone says your sex is female, that triggers something in most people. They don't think of gender, the word gender. They
Mm.
think of sex as being the physical anatomy. It would be a lot easier for you if you were just gay. You wouldn't have to change everything else. This is what it is. You're not only changing and aligning with your internal being, you're having to deconstruct a male persona, learn new mannerisms and behaviors, and completely transition yourself physically in appearance and how you present yourself in society every day. That takes a lot of mental work up front.
Welcome back to our show, Empower Your Life. I'm your host, Cindy Marie. After a refreshing break, it's great to be back with a brand new episode. Today, we're joined by a transition mentor dedicated to helping humanizing the experience of being born transgender and helping individuals and parents to navigate the journey. She specializes in self acceptance and personal growth, supporting transgender individuals and empowering women entrepreneurs to overcome imposter syndrome and self doubt. Having personally navigated significant life transitions, including her own gender transitions, she brings a unique perspective and a proven strategies to help others to thrive. Join us for an important discussion on embracing transitions and authenticity with Wendy Cole. Wendy, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Cindy. I'm so glad to be here, and I really welcome this opportunity to speak with you.
Awesome, awesome. It's super topic, so let's dive in. But before that, on our show, Wendy, I love for our guests to share their stories because I truly believe it's a fundamental way for us to connect deeply, right? So
Mhm.
tell us your story, your journey with us about your life transitions.
Well, in your introduction, you talked about being born transgender. What a lot of people don't understand, and they actually misconstrue this, they think it's a choice. It's how we're born.
Hmm.
Um, there are two things that kind of get wired up in your brain during the second trimester of birth,
Mm-hmm.
and that is gender identity and sexual orientation. Those are two things that are internal. Um, when you're born, the doctor says, "Oh," and in my case, he said, "Oh, it's a boy,"
Mm-hmm.
based on my physical anatomy between my legs. However, gender's between the ears, not the legs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when you're born, doctors don't know that. So my parents started right away. I was, with the socialization as a little boy.
Mm-hmm.
Wrap it in a blue blanket, wrap it in a pink blanket based on what the doctor said.
Of
It's
course.
basically that simple. As I began to get older,
Mm-hmm.
by 3 and 4, I knew that I was more comfortable playing with my mom's um, friends' daughters. I was
Mm-hmm.
much more comfortable playing with little girls. Then I went to school, and that's when the teachers start to say, boys over here, girls over there, and you get kind of divided up based on your sex assigned at birth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I really began by age 5, definitely, to know that that wasn't right for me,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't have the words to put to that. I didn't understand it, but I knew enough that if I said anything, it would be kind of construed as wrong by adults around me and everything. It didn't fit with how I was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
By 10, Cindy, I got to a point where I couldn't hold it in anymore.
Mm.
I went through a lot of things to try and hold it back, but no. I wound up telling my parents, I'm a girl. That and one of the ways in which I did it with my mom was I would put on dresses that I found that fit and do makeup and do my nails and wait for her to come home from grocery shopping. And oh, you have to get out of that. But mom, I'm really feel I'm a girl.
Mhm.
And well, you have to get out of that before your father comes home. So I would stay like that for maybe an hour or so. I'd help her put away groceries, things like that. I did that 4 or 5 times, and I wound up being taken to a psychiatric center,
Mm.
sitting with the psychiatrist. And that's the first time. And of course, this, by the way, Cindy, is in the late 1950s.
Oh, no, yeah.
Definitely not acceptable.
I know.
And children are seen, not heard then, too.
Yes, yes.
So the psychiatrist was talking right by me to my parents. And
Mhm.
he said, well, he's too young to diagnose as transsexual. That was the term for it back then. Um, and this is just a little transvestism, and he'll outgrow it.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm a girl. And that was that. I was taken from the room. In another session, I heard, oh, once he has a wife, a career, a wife, a house and family, he'll forget all about being a girl. And then I said it again. No, I'm a girl. And again, I got taken to the waiting room. I spent, we had about 4 or 5 sessions with the psychiatrist. And on the last drive home, my mom turned to me from the front seat and said, you have to stop insisting you're a girl. You have to stop thinking like that. And if you don't, we're going to commit you to the psychiatric center where you'll be fixed.
Oh,
Scary,
of
especially
course.
in 1958 and at age 10 or so.
Yes.
So I repressed it and
Mm.
repressed it. It did affect my social life all the way through school, grammar school, middle school, high school especially. I didn't go to proms. I didn't date. I didn't do much of anything. I had a few guy friends that we did stuff together, and that was pretty much it.
Mhm.
And I had this big secret to hide. I actually forced myself to try and fit in by enrolling in an all men's college. That didn't work either.
Wow, that must be difficult.
Very.
Mhm.
And by my senior year, I had moved off campus, away from everybody.
Mhm.
And I had friends in town, and I found a psychiatrist my senior year who said he was going to help me.
Mhm.
And I actually started to dress as Wendy. By the way, I picked the name Wendy in grammar school. She was the most popular girl in my class, the prettiest. And if I could ever be a girl, I want to be Wendy.
There you go.
So I would dress privately in my apartment,
Mhm.
and my psychiatrist wanted me to start coming out to people. Well, I wasn't going to come out to anybody on campus.
Mhm.
I was just going to graduate and leave. So I started working with the psychiatrist and coming out to neighbors in my apartment building. That was fine. I came out to my local friends,
Mhm.
and that was fine. It was all starting to go pretty well. Um, I wound up being taken as a um, case study patient
Oh, wow. Yeah.
to a meeting of a bunch of psychiatrists. There was about 15 or 20 in a conference room in the local hospital.
Mm.
This is in upstate New York in 1970.
God. Yeah.
In 1970, both in New York State and California, New York City and San Francisco. If you appeared in public in female attire while assigned male at birth and the police figured it out, you would be arrested, thrown in jail, and fined
Mhm.
for being that way. So, but I was doing it anyway. And I didn't go to the hospital to that meeting as Wendy because of that situation. I'm sitting there, I'm talking to this group of psychiatrists. No more than 5 minutes into it, one of them stands up and says, I'll see you all next quarter. It was a quarterly meeting. I'll see you all next quarter. Turns to me and says, you're a freak. You should move to New York City and turn tricks like the rest of them.
Wow.
I had no idea what he was talking about, but I was crushed.
Yeah.
Unlike today, where kids in my situation, anywhere from teenagers to college students, walk around with a computer in their pocket called a phone with Google on it and social media, and they have all these contacts and connections. Back then, even in 1970, zero.
Yeah.
I had no clue or connection with anyone else like me. And I've been told from age 10 that, oh, you're the only one that feels like this.
Yeah.
So that ended my attempt to transition, 1970. I wound up, I've been always told, have a career and check all the boxes up for heteronormative life, and
Yeah.
you'll forget all about this. So that's what I decided to try. I actually did. I had a long career in the computer field, and I did very well with it. That didn't make this go away, of course. I actually got married. I actually had a family. That didn't fix it either. It just made it more complicated and even worse.
True.
I did tell my wife about this
Mm.
in 1978 after 4 years of marriage. I was at my wit's end. I was talking about being a woman in my sleep. I I ended up she decided the next day that we're not getting a divorce. As long as you don't do anything about this, we're going to stay together. And she had her own reasons, which I found out later what they were, but we stayed together. We were actually married for 40 years.
Wow. Wow. 40 years.
40 years. During that time, I did everything I could to suppress this. And it was totally a secret between my wife and I. She even allowed me to cross-dress early on, which I tried, but it had to be a secret. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't do anything. And it really did not help because every time I dressed, I would have to take everything off. And that was just another reminder of this and what I couldn't be. It was too painful.
Yes.
So I was in a very dark place in 2014. My tech career had pretty much ended in 2012. I was doing, actually, for the last 15 to 20 years, somewhere in there, I'd done contract work. I was a contract employee, and I did very well with it. And these were my silicone life forms that I learned to talk to and make them do things and all of that. And it was a great way to repress this because I could totally absorb into that world.
Yeah.
Well, that ended. And by 2014, I was not in a good place. And I decided before I did something desperate, the suicidal ideations were terrible. I looked up online and to see if anything had changed with my diagnosis. In 1970, I was told it's a psychological condition with no treatment and no cure. So, yes, it had. 2012, everything changed. um, I could get help from a therapist. I could start hormone replacement therapy.
Mm.
I could have surgeries. Wow. And then insurance coverage started up in 2013. So I saw that. I immediately went to my wife and I said, I'm getting a therapist. Remember what we talked about in 1978?
Mhm.
That never went away. She
Oh.
goes, I know. I said, well, it, I have to do something about it. I'm going to find a therapist and see where this leads. I
Mm.
don't know yet. She said, okay, find a therapist. So I did find a therapist, really wonderful woman. She had had other transgender patients. She basically had a really good approach that worked for me.
Mm.
Rather than me just talking all the time about my feelings and she going, how does that feel to you? And what do you feel about that? She challenged my beliefs.
Yeah.
It was a it was a discussion. There was a lot of give and take. Um, I actually wound up giving myself homework after every session.
Mm.
And that's when I started to learn that it's my thoughts and my emotions that combine to form my beliefs.
Mm. Mhm.
And if I wanted to make changes, I had to change my thoughts.
Mhm. Oof.
My
Yeah.
first session with her was wonderful. This, Cindy, this was the first time in 45 years I
Mhm.
had ever talked with anyone in depth about how I feel and
Mhm.
about who I am. 45 years of hiding that.
Yeah.
So it was a huge relief. And as I got stood up to leave, I I turned to her to say goodbye. She looked up at me and she said, "What's your name?" That was her style. And I just snapped back, Wendy. And I looked and the joy. She just took a pen, crossed out my male facsimile's name. That's what I called him, my male facsimile or male representative, and wrote Wendy on my file. From that day forward, I was Wendy to her.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
That was huge. By my third session, and during my second session, I told her, I said, I would like to come next week as Wendy. And she said, you can come any way you wish. It's a safe environment, no problem.
Yeah.
And that, of course, had a lot with my wife during the course of that week leading up to my third session. Because I'm breaking all the rules now. I'm leaving the house. I'm driving a car. I'm going out in public as Wendy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So we got through that. That Thursday morning, I got the car and I left. Before doing that, I had done all my meditations, my visioning of how would it feel to drive there in my car, to get out of the car, to walk down to the front door, see my reflection in the glass door. How would I feel with that? And that's not what I think, but how would I feel?
Mm.
And that really got me centered on doing this. And when the day came, I'm driving in the car. This feels great. Wow. I never imagined I could feel so good. And then getting out and walking into the building, seeing my reflection. Um, I got into the waiting room. Now, here's people. I've never been in front of people before as Wendy.
Mm.
I put my coat down on a chair. I walked into the restroom, took some very deep, long breaths just to get grounded again, checked myself out in the mirror, walked back out into the waiting room, picked up a magazine and sat there and kind of looked from side to side and around the room. Is anybody looking at me?
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
one was. It was It was great. That session with Stephanie, my therapist, was just amazing. And I left there knowing this is what I need to do.
Mhm.
This is me. And, I just decided that I don't, I came away from that, and throughout the rest of the first 6 months of 2015,
Mhm.
I focused on just me, getting myself to a point where because I'd spent all those decades of repression.
Of course.
Now I have to get to a point where I can accept myself for who I truly am
Mm.
and be me.
Mhm.
And that was what I call all the mental work that I did
Yes.
to actually make that happen. By on the way to and from therapy, I still stuck with my agreement with my wife at the time.
Mhm.
Other than therapy, I won't go anywhere as Wendy. So on the way to therapy and on the way home from therapy, I gave myself life tests. I would do a practice run through a supermarket because I knew I had to go grocery shopping. So go to the supermarket, walk around, be in public, see who's there.
Yeah.
Go into town, walk down Main Street, go into a Starbucks, have a coffee. Those types of things. And I never once had a problem.
Mhm.
Everything just sort of flowed.
Mhm.
And I was in that moment and it just worked. And I honestly can say I didn't have any real fears. There were a lot of little doubts that crept in, and then I go, well, just do it. That became
Yeah.
my mantra. Just do it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I go off and just do it. And it worked. It
Yeah.
just worked. Um, June came around, and I had already been looking for an apartment in a town that was about 40 miles away where I was going to move to.
Mhm.
And my wife said to me, I'm concerned about everything. I don't know what's going to happen. I never expected you to do this at age 67. I had constantly worried that it would happen earlier in our lives, but no, now at 67, I said, I'm happy because I'm finally getting to be me, who I've always been.
Mhm.
And it feels good. And I'm sorry. That was one of the times she said, my first husband left me for another woman. Now my second husband leaves me to become a woman. And we both laughed. You have to have a sense of humor about this.
Of course. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So in July, 6 months is what it took for me to go from zero to
Mhm.
living full time. And that's by no means a record. I've had clients who have done it faster.
Yeah.
Uh, the community itself, I always hear, oh, transition is difficult and takes a long time.
Yeah.
And my response to that is, if that's what you believe, then that's the way it will be,
Mhm.
because you can't live outside your beliefs.
Yeah. But one of the things that I want probably for us to dive deep is that understanding what is gender transition or transgender, because based on my small research of time, there are only few or only four countries that openly embrace, or at least people who recognize themselves as transgender are open in United States, in Brazil, in Philippines, and Thailand.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if there's additional. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So, what is it? And you mentioned earlier that you have this discussion with your wife. Why at 67? So, I'm also curious, and obviously, what I'm following up the question of understanding that the transgender is also why now, Wendy? What sparked the urgency for you to share your journey and message with the world, which I believe it's very important because you mentioned it earlier, just being me. but I think there's powerful message behind that that spark you to just do it. What is
Mhm.
it? So there are two questions.
Okay. It's really how a person is born. When you're born, you had the good fortune
Mhm,
that your body during the second trimester of birth became female, and your gender identity in your mind, in your brain,
mhm,
formed to match that.
mhm,
Your gender is female. Whereas in my case, my brain continued to stay female, whereas my body began to change, because we all start out basically as either kind of a nebulous thing or more female than not. And it's the male that really begins to differentiate
mhm.
with the physical anatomy. And yes, there are genetics and hormones and all of that stuff to it. But the predominant thing is the physical anatomy of the body between the legs and the gender identity that gets formed in the brain.
Mhm.
So in my case, there was a total incongruence
Yeah.
between what formed in my brain and what formed in my body.
Mhm.
And because of socialization and how people look at when someone says your sex is female, that triggers something in most people. They don't think of gender, the word gender. They
Mm.
think of sex as being the physical anatomy.
Yeah.
But gender is more than that. It's how you see yourself, how you accept yourself, and
Mm.
who you are. And that's all up here. Gender's between the ears, not the legs.
Yes, yes, yes. So that's what
So,
it meant.
right. So when I had in the town that I lived in for 5 years, I had a lot of gay friends, men and women who were gay, as well as a lot of women friends who were born female.
Mhm.
And that is, I found that they didn't really understand this either.
Yeah.
I expected gay people would understand me, but within my first week as Wendy, living in my neighborhood, a gay couple left flowers at my front door. Welcome to the neighborhood, Chad and Jason, number 15. Okay, I went down. We had a conversation. It started at 9 o'clock on a Sunday evening.
Oh.
And I said, for the very first time, I said, I'm an open book. Ask me anything you want to, and absolutely nothing is off limits. And Jason said, you shouldn't have said that in front of Chad. I got asked everything, which kind of blew my mind
Yeah.
because I thought they would understand because we're all LGBT. Well, those are like little silos with little communities in each, and there's not a lot of understanding across them,
Yes, yes,
is
yes.
what I found.
Mhm.
Because also understand, until 2015, I wasn't part of that world. I firmly believe, Cindy, I've been on this path since 2015 to get to this
Mhm.
because I moved into this town, gay community, gay bar, and I had both a mixed bag of cisgender people, both single and married couples, as well as gay couples.
Mhm.
And as I started to get to know people and have these kinds of conversations, I realized I loved it. It was a real human connection.
Yes.
So I worked in a supermarket for about 3 years to supplement my retirement income,
Mhm.
have a little extra money to go play with and everything.
Yeah.
And at first, I was very worried as people were coming through my line. Do they realize or do they think that I transitioned? Is there anything that gives me away? And after about 3 months, I gave that up.
Yeah.
No need. what I found out as time went on is nobody suspected a thing. Even the women that I worked with in the front of the supermarket, and it was a busy market,
Mhm.
they never even suspected anything was different about me. I was just Wendy, just another cashier out there doing her job. And by the way, I was doing it really well.
Mhm.
So my line was always long. And one of the girls whose job it was to, well, that register's really light with people. Why don't you move down there? No, we like her. She bags well, she's fast. We'll get through, and we like her. That's what I was told.
Nice.
So then in 2018, Dr. Bluebond, my surgeon, arranged for me to be interviewed by Huffington Post.
Nice.
So I went to Manhattan, Huffington Post headquarters, had a 4-hour interview with a photo shoot.
Mhm.
And I figured, okay, this is great. I loved the experience. It was
Of
amazing.
course. Yes.
And all part of my love of New York City. And um, I figured, oh, the people in the little town in Pennsylvania where I live, New Hope, Pennsylvania, they're not going to know. Wrong.
Mhm.
About a month after the article came out online, all these, a lot of my women regulars that would come through my line, Wendy, saw your article. I had no idea. You're amazing. So I would tell them the same thing. I'm an open book. Ask me anything you want to, and nothing's off limits. And I went to lunch with quite a few people, went for coffee, went for drinks, and we had conversation. I answered questions. I did that for 5 years,
Mm.
my first 5 years. And I didn't realize how good it really felt.
Yeah.
I'm no longer really hiding from everyone. I
Mhm.
can, and then in New York City, the first time I was invited to speak, I was just invited to an event.
Mhm.
I wasn't told that they wanted me to speak.
Okay.
I think I would have panicked still, but I
Yeah.
went. And the next thing I know, Wendy, come here. They hand me the microphone. Go up, go on stage, talk about your life. Oh, wow. But it, Cindy, this was a complete shock to me.
Mm.
I wasn't nervous. I went up on stage. I could see everybody. They could see me.
Mhm.
And I didn't, they just said, talk about my life. Okay. So I started talking about my life. And I didn't have any script or anything. It was
Yeah.
just from my heart. Here's what it is. And I could see the facial expressions.
Mhm.
Uh, I saw one of my gay friends tearing up.
Mm.
Afterwards, and after everything was done, there was cocktails and hors d'oeuvres and things like that being served and all of that, and people were mingling. I had people gathering around me, asking me more questions and talking with me and telling me things and all. It was just amazing to me. I'd never experienced that in my previous life because I was not social.
Mm.
My therapist told me, Stephanie, she said, and she knew my psychiatrist because she had referred me to him. My first psychiatrist, the one that I had been seeing, who was prescribing all the psych meds, wanted me to go to conversion therapy when I told him about this.
Mhm.
And conversion therapy doesn't work.
Mhm.
That's where they try and change you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she sent me to a different one, and he took me off all the psych meds and phased me off the last couple and said, you don't need them anymore. You're on estrogen and you're going to be fine.
Mhm.
And he was absolutely right. And she told me about 2 years later, she said to me, both Dr. Pruce and I, we first met you as your male representative, Then when we met Wendy, she said,
Mhm.
we couldn't believe the personality change.
Mm.
You were a completely different person almost immediately. And it just kept evolving.
Yeah.
So I did say to her, I think around my third year after I had surgery, I said, Steph, if I stop seeing you, can we be
Yeah.
friends? And she said, oh, absolutely. I'd love that. I stopped seeing her after 5 years.
Wow.
And um, so I said, well, can we now be friends? And she said, well, let's give it another year or two just to make sure you don't need me professionally again. But she said, I don't think you will, but let's not take that chance. I said, okay. We did stay in touch via email, things like that. And um, we did become friends. We go out together and all of that when I was living in Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
And before I left Pennsylvania, we spent a whole day together, just
Mm,
hanging
that's
out in
nice.
town at one of the bars and talking and having a great time. And it was wonderful. And I called her. I was in an extended stay hotel waiting for my apartment to become available.
Mhm.
And one night it just hit me, and I called her up and I said, remember the first session when you asked my name? And
Mhm.
I snapped back, Wendy. I hope you remember, you were the first person in 67 years of my life to ever accept me. Her
Oh,
response was, and I wasn't the last. You've got a lot of friends. And she's right. But it's definitely been a journey
yeah.
and one that I'm so grateful for. Um, the reason at age 67, I was done living.
Mhm.
I was I was ready to kill myself. This is just so much. And one of my transgender friends
Mhm.
always used to say, we're dealing with this, we're living it, and now we're happy. Finally happy. But she said, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy.
Mhm.
That incongruence about who you feel you are and who you have to be for society purposes based on your physical anatomy.
Mhm.
That's just a very difficult thing to deal with.
Yeah.
And the reason that I'm putting myself out to discuss this
Mhm.
openly is there's so many people that just don't understand that how many people have ever met anyone like me
Mm.
that they could even ask,
Yeah.
but yet they hear all this stuff both in the news and in writing, in print,
Yeah.
from people that basically right now are using transgender people as a wedge issue in society to
Wow.
promote fear of us. We're just people like
Yeah.
anyone else.
Mhm.
And that's all there is to it.
Yeah. And so you're becoming, as I always tell to myself, I'm becoming a tool for many that still in the progress of having that brave and courage as well to
Right.
share their journey, because you mentioned earlier that you went through mental work and inner work, and it's not easy for everybody, right? And you
Right.
have that piece of uh, picture or drawing of a butterfly. Change is good, is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah, so
I bought that my first week as Wendy in
nice.
a Bed Bath and Beyond.
Yeah, I love butterfly too. So because I saw that, and the thing that came to mind is like, change is inevitable, growth is optional. So many people know, and I've said this before, many people know the value of change, right? And we know that people have the choice and decision to make. So, my question to you is that with this statement of change is inevitable and growth is optional, how does it resonate with the journey of reconnecting with our authentic self in this period of, in this case, gender transition? Because in my opinion, it's more challenging than the male and female
Hmm.
transition.
Right.
For example, for my case, being people pleaser to now, owning my own happiness without worrying about other people. But I
Mhm.
think, and this is where we are having further discussion, is that there would be more challenge than the usual female and male with the
Mhm.
gender transition. So how does that resonate with change is inevitable and growth is optional?
I have experienced more personal growth doing this than I ever dreamed of.
Mm,
Um, the very first, one of the very first people I came out to, and he and his partner came to have lunch with my wife and I one day before I actually moved out. And he came out as gay when he was in college.
no.
And so he and his partner are sitting there, we're talking about this, and he had known me um, from high school when
Mm-hmm.
he was in high school, and he had no clue that this was who I was.
Wow.
And we're talking, and he looked at me and he said, it would be a lot easier for you if you were just gay. You wouldn't have to change everything else. This is what it is. You're not only changing and aligning with your internal being, you're having to deconstruct a male persona, learn new mannerisms and behaviors, and completely transition yourself physically in appearance and how you
Mhm.
present yourself in society every day. That takes a lot of mental work up
Mhm.
front to
Mm.
be able to do that. And I think through all of that, I I learned to really embrace change.
Mhm.
Um, I found that the way I had been living before, I was in routines,
Mhm.
and anything that upset that routine would upset me.
Mhm.
So being happy, well, as long as everything was going along in the set routine on a day by day basis, everything was quote unquote happy. But that wasn't really true.
Yeah.
I wasn't really happy.
Mhm.
When I started doing this and becoming really self aware,
Mhm.
finding true self acceptance
Mhm.
for my being, that's when I started to say, wow, I'm really happy now.
Yeah.
Happiness is inside,
Yes.
and it isn't, and it doesn't, it's not dependent on the external.
No.
And that's when I started to discover too that my thoughts
Mhm.
would trigger emotions. And
Yeah.
emotions are the mind's way of communicating with the body what you're feeling. And it's the whole body chemistry that gets triggered by those emotions.
Yes.
And so embracing change, that leads to personal growth,
Mhm.
new experiences, new ways of looking at things and doing new things.
Yeah.
That's what triggers personal growth.
Mhm.
And I just began to really enjoy all of that. And that was all within the first 6 to 12 months of becoming myself. And it's a very powerful experience.
It is.
One of the things that I find that a lot of people in my community
Mhm.
do skip, they're either not aware of it or they just focus on the facade.
Yes.
And then they wind up getting to a certain point where, oh my God, I still have all these doubts. I still have all these fears. I go out in public, I socialize with people. I tell my friends about my background and my life. Um, I'm of course revealing it on podcasts, but um, in my normal everyday life, if I go out to a restaurant or go out to a club someplace, or I'm meeting people on a social basis who are total strangers,
Mhm.
I don't tell them I'm transgender.
Mhm.
I'm a woman.
Yes.
That's how I identify.
Mhm.
Uh, Female on my driver's license. I'm a woman. I'm female. I've had surgery. I had my birth defect corrected in 2017
Mhm.
at NYU Medical Center. And that was just an amazing, wonderful experience and a profound life change.
Yeah.
Yet another one. During my first 2 years of living as Wendy, I had new experiences every day. You know, all the small things, like the first time I ever signed my name was on a discount card at a grocery store. I'm standing in line with all the other people, a lot of women there. We're at the service desk, and I get up. I said, I'd like a discount card. And they said, sure. And they gave me the thing. I filled out the form and I signed my name, Wendy Cole. That was the first time I ever signed that name. That was a new experience.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I just would, at the end of the day, I would be sitting in my apartment and just reflecting on all the new experiences I had had and how good it was and how great it felt. Yes, there were challenges. Yes, there are still difficulties and all, but uh, I was also making new friends.
Yes.
I had a whole new community around me.
Yes. That that brought me to this question as when we are willing and committed to make a change so that we can really transform. And that really takes a lot of courage. And I know based on our journey, we help people, and the self awareness is the key, right? And
Hmm.
one of the things that I notice is that not only the thoughts that really could sabotage our transformation, but also because of that thought, and then you're not able or willing to let go. What I mean of letting go is that the comfortable area, that could be the
Hmm.
people, that could be your environment, and that could be of course your beliefs. And my question to you with this, right, thoughts from the person who are from the person who is going through,
Hmm.
because I do believe you know deep inside of you, no one can deny except you. You know, you, yes, what you said, you can always show up and be the amazing person outside, but when you come back home, you know deep inside of you that that's why the thoughts keep coming back. Who do you think you are?
Hmm.
You're showing up yourself as that person, but deep inside of you, you are this person,
Hmm.
and you are your worst enemy, as what they say,
Right.
right? And what would be your piece of suggestion for those people that they know that there's something different in there's a transition? They're just, of course, the fear is there. It's because of what the society might say. But when you give yourself the permission to just do it, is there any particular that you found that this is the step for me that took me to get to the next level? What would that be?
It comes down to the self-awareness that you mentioned and
Mm-hmm.
the self-acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has a lot to do with letting go. letting go of everything that's routine, letting go of things that are familiar. And I don't really care what the change or what the transition is,
Mhm.
letting go so that you can move forward. And I really started to embrace moving forward.
Mhm.
That was so much more rewarding. It felt so much better.
Mhm.
And as I said, I would give myself little life tests. And it was
Mhm.
those single steps, no matter how small, taking a step. Oh, yeah, that wasn't so bad. I can do more of this. Now,
Mhm.
what am I going to do next? And next and next. I kept doing that, Cindy, until I wound up walking into an operating room in NYU Medical Center, and Dr. Bluebond did my surgery.
Mhm.
And because I always wanted to have my birth defect corrected. And the thing that I didn't realize fully, and
Mhm.
it didn't hit me until I was walking down 30th Street in Manhattan and I saw my reflection in these black glass windows. And I'm standing there going, oh my God, you finally did it. You're complete. Everything's in alignment now. That's when I realized also that for those first 2 years,
Mhm.
because of my physical anatomy down between my legs, um, in the mornings and at night alone, when I was getting dressed or undressed, whatever, I would feel that that sense of imposter syndrome
Yeah.
because my body still wasn't right. It still didn't match how I saw myself.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's why I needed the surgery. I had a lot of my gay guy friends going, they grab their crotch and go, Wendy, how can you do that? And I just laugh and I go, correcting my birth defect. That's all it is.
Yeah, and speaking of friends, right? So for individuals or parents, how do you think we, for many people, I believe, and I'm one part of that, we are still considered naive or innocence with how we can approach or how can we show support with family, friends, or colleagues that are going through this gender transition? Where do you think best we can support or showing our support to this closest people in our lives that going through a gender transition?
One of the first things I'll frame this first, parents or friends of someone who's going through this
Mm-hmm.
have no context by which to understand this.
Mm.
It's a totally foreign concept for most people.
Yes.
Um, unless you've ever looked in the mirror and said, "Oh, I should have been a man or I should have been a woman," you won't understand this. So
Yeah.
the first thing is getting some knowledge about it, some factual knowledge from reputable sources,
Sources, yes.
which is what I'm trying to be for some people who
Mm-hmm.
are open-minded enough to listen,
Yes.
and just accept it as it is. This
Mhm.
person that is going through this life change, it's not a choice. It's actually who they are, and they've experienced already a lot of
Mm.
pain to get there. None of us in the LGBT world come out as who we are because of courage.
Mm.
We come out to survive.
Mm.
I had many conversations with gay men who were married, had families, had careers, and they just couldn't take it anymore. And they came out as gay, they got divorced, and they completely changed their lives. And I'm sitting at a gay bar with these guys, and we're having this whole conversation.
Mhm.
And I would go, okay, the only difference between you and me is you became a G, I became a T. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's survival.
Hmm.
The courage comes in to actually face people who have known you
Yes.
as your previous self. That's the courage part.
Mhm, mhm.
And for parents, uh, it needs to be acceptance without the need to understand it. Under, the need to understand spirals you down all kinds of areas where it's not going to benefit the parent, it's not going to benefit the child. Child
Mhm.
being the relationship, not necessarily the age,
Yeah.
because people come out at 30 and 40s and their parents are still alive, and that's just as difficult for parents of a 40-year-old as it is for parents of a teenager.
Mhm.
It's pretty much the same thing. And if you want to preserve that relationship, you have to accept this for what it is
Mhm.
and get the knowledge and the awareness of it, that this is not a choice for that person. It's not a choice for any of us.
Mhm.
For somebody who comes out as gay, as I said in the beginning, gender identity gets wired in the brain, so does sexual orientation. That also gets wired in the brain before
Mhm.
birth. So most of my friends knew that they were gay at a very young age and knew based on societal norms, the heteronormative society,
Mhm. Mhm.
that it was wrong.
Yeah. And don't you think that I have this actually curious observation and question in my mind, especially in the Philippines, because gay is very high percentage and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just curious of understanding whether it could be different in your case, but you might have this conversation with your friends. Does the society also have influence for the change of the feeling of I am gay or I'm lesbian? Because I have that thought that maybe people got influenced because of the society. For example, their family members are all lesbian and gays, and therefore it ended up the boy or the girl get influenced. And I'm not sure, and I'm this is as just a question that came to mind, that's super
Okay.
curious. If you have sort of conversation with your friends, does that also with people who are in transition in gender, or it's different?
I would say that the external influences don't even come into this at all.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I knew at a very young age also, especially after puberty and everything else in high school, I knew my parents worried that I was gay. I knew I wasn't.
Yeah.
I just knew that. The one thing that was very confusing to me and was incredibly confusing until after I had surgery in 2017
Mm-hmm.
was I wasn't convinced either that I should be married to a woman.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that sex with a man for me was all wrong. That's just not the way I was wired. And I've known I have a very close gay friend in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
He dated girls all the way through high school. He dated into college and all of that. But I think it was around 22 or 23.
Mm-hmm.
He just was so curious. He had sex with a man.
Mm.
And his statement to me was, wow, I'll never go back. This
Okay.
is who I am.
Mhm.
But up until that point, he was doing what I was doing, conforming to heteronormative societal standards,
Uh-huh.
checking all the boxes to say he's normal.
Yeah.
That socialization is a very powerful thing,
Mm,
and uh, it will prevent people from actually being themselves,
yes.
whether they're depending on their sexual orientation or their gender identity. And it does take a lot of internal self-acceptance to go beyond that and say to society, no, this is who I am. And yes, I know I'm different,
Yes,
but
I hear
I
you.
don't care. I have to be this way. This is me.
I hear you. That's exactly my statement to myself and to people. Like, yes, because I told you my story as a people pleaser, suppressing, repressing,
Hmm.
because you don't want to hurt other people. And yet you didn't know that you are hurting yourself more, and just came
Exactly.
to the point that I'm done with this. And so those people who knew you, the old version of you, couldn't take it. And so it's either they will create their own thoughts or stories or narratives just
Mhm.
for them to believe what's happening. But for me, I was like, I'm done. And like what you said, I do care more on embracing myself. So as what you do as well, so we can serve other, because there are
Exactly.
so many people out there that really needed us to become their tool to step
Mhm.
in, that it is safe, it is
Right.
okay. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of practice and inner work and a lot of self-talk, you know, that
Mhm.
yes or no, or yes or no. But at least in my journey, I know the fact that as long as you're aware that you want to move forward and you want to live the life that you truly being you, and there's nothing wrong with that, but also knowing that there are a lot of challenges that you're going to face, because in reality, being who you are, regardless of gender or identity, still not as acceptable as for many, because
And
we are conditioned with the programming. And many of us, including you and myself, are those people who are already awakened that no, it's not working.
you're
So
right, exactly. It's definitely been a journey and an experience, and it's one that I am so glad that I'm on. It actually improved my physical health.
no, how's that?
I weighed about 70 pounds more than I do now. I didn't care about how I looked physically at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was type 2 diabetic from age 38 or 39.
Wow.
And I had all kinds of little blood work problems with cholesterol and triglycerides and a few other things going on.
Mm-hmm.
So for decades, I was on medications for all of that.
Yeah.
3 years after after beginning to live authentically,
Mm-hmm.
my primary care doctor looked at me and he goes, "What is going on with you?" I'm looking back through all your medical records. I'm looking at all of your blood work, everything. I'm taking you off the meds. You don't need
Nice.
them anymore. You don't even need the diabetic meds anymore. Your A1C is down. Everything is bright green and normal. What do you attribute this to? And I said, for the first time in my life, I'm truly happy. It all
Mm.
starts with being happy. All that anxiety, all the worry, all the fear. Oh, and God, did I carry guilt
Oh, yes.
and shame for even feeling like I was feeling. And that's one of the first things that my therapist helped me let go of within 2 sessions was the guilt.
That's powerful.
because
It,
I had hurt so many people by living a lie and not being true to myself and to them.
mm,
So all of those very powerful negative emotions
mhm.
create a lot of chemical reactions in your body, from your hypothalamus to all the glands throughout your body, your hormone levels, everything. And those can be good or those can be very bad. And I was just hammering my body to pieces with all this stuff.
Yeah.
And
I, yeah, sorry, go on.
go ahead.
No, because you mentioned as you started to embrace and accept yourself as who you are being, and that literally will say, because you also went to see your doctor and suddenly everything went green, which is amazing. And that represents that you are your own healer,
Mm-hmm.
right? And can I safe to say that when you truly embrace who you are being, the flaws and the good and the not so good ones, everything, there's that a stepping place for you to start to feel better. And as what you said, you mentioned being happy. Therefore, everything else, your immune system, your body will tell you that, hey, we're happy, and then everything will turn into a fact. There's a data because you're also starting to speak nice to yourself, right? It's all
Exactly.
about in the thought, taking your mind and speaking to yourself that I am beautiful, I
Mm,
am accepted, I am worthy, I am validated, I am enough. And some people, or majority of the people, are unable to say that to themselves, especially when nobody's listening. Therefore, we are starting to experience something within our body, a reflection that we are not helping ourselves to heal. That's why we're taking so much medicine. But
yeah,
then when we start to change into our mindset, our mental, our thinking, then we started to switch that on to a new
mm-hmm.
programming that you can heal yourself. Is that correct?
Absolutely, totally agree. If that little voice inside your head that's going all the time telling you what you can't do and
Mhm.
what you should do and all the other things, once that's talking to you in a much more supportive manner, and also too, I do believe that this is a life skill.
Mm,
I've learned how to change my thoughts to be more supportive of me.
mm,
That's not to say that there are days when doubts and things like that creep in, but I've got the tools now and
yes.
the knowledge of how to manage that.
Hmm.
And oh, this past winter, my main website disappeared.
Oh, wow.
That was the first time I spiraled down
Mhm.
in probably 7 or 8 years and went really like totally panicked. It took me no more than about 2 hours to come out of it.
Nice.
I had already started to build a second website that I could use at the end of podcast interviews as a place to connect with people. So I
Mhm.
already had that. Oh, okay. So I can expand that. I'll have somewhat of a website still. This will work out, and then I'll figure out with the help of the hosting company and some web people what's going on with my website. Everything was fixed the next day.
There you go.
I con I contacted the people that I bought the WordPress template from for my website, and they said, "Oh yeah, here's what you need to do." Oh, okay, that was simple, fixed, all back. There was no need to spiral, and I knew that going into it, but I had the tools to block
Yeah.
it, get myself back out of it. deal with things on a more positive level, as it were, and move forward. And everything resolved itself. So I've I've taken this philosophy of, yeah, there are times where things are difficult
Mm-hmm.
and you have doubts about them, but
Mm-hmm.
that too will pass
Yes.
because life is change.
Life is change.
And it's also about possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And we have an infinite number of possibilities for our lives. The only problem is our beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Our beliefs can block us from ever achieving them or even block us from even realizing they're there.
Yes. Oh, that's so deep. That's so deep.
That's where I've come from over the last 9 years of dealing with this. As I tell my clients very early on, um, your gender is determined by a clerk in a store. You walk into a convenience store, at a gas station, or anywhere. The first time a person sees you, they instinctively, automatically, and subconsciously even,
Mm-hmm.
assign your gender. Oh, that's a girl or that's a boy. It's up to you not to confuse them. You have to have the right mannerisms and the behaviors. And because gender itself is a spectrum, there's no one who's absolutely male or absolutely female.
Yes.
We're all a blend
Correct.
with an emphasis to one side or the other,
Yes.
to one degree or another. That's why
Mm.
there are a lot of gay women who, a lot of them can act like men.
Yeah.
I've seen that. Nothing wrong with that. If you are out in public, you want to be at least 50% toward the side that you're presenting as.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it took me a very short period of time when I was doing those, test things experimental things that I did after therapy. It took me a very short period of time to figure out,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's right. All I have to be is at least a little bit over that line and carry myself in a certain way
Mm-hmm.
and behave in certain ways that people would just totally accept what they see.
Mm.
And that's all there is to it. The community uses the word pass. Oh, you don't pass. Or I get told all the time, oh, you pass great. No, it's not. I hate that word. Passing is a very negative word. It
Mm.
implies that you're fooling people by what you're doing. No, I'm just being me.
Mm-hmm.
I emphasize blending. You want to blend in. That's a combination of how you accept yourself and how you present yourself, you behave, and your mannerisms.
I'm sure for those people watching or listening right now, as you come out as who you are and very confident and comfortable as who you are, and you mentioned about the tools, materials, resources, and all of that. I I am an optimist. So I'm not sure if you do the same because some of the people that I have interviewed prefer not to use that word and use other term and not even believing with the term. And so but I still embrace I am optimist. So I'm super curious, how do you keep yourself optimistic? And if you may, share with us at least three of your personal tips in terms of keeping yourself optimistic. Because first is that I'm sure, or I'm assuming that there are a lot of people who have a lot of questions, curiosity. How do you manage to come out just like that? Da, 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 da. And so many people will also give you a lot of their experiences, and I'm sure you are able to handle those information, but sometimes it can bring you back of how much it took you a long, long years. And now you have all of these tools and share with us. How do you keep yourself optimistic?
I have a fundamental belief that things will ultimately work out as they should. or as they will.
Hmm.
Um, there are things that I would like to happen in my life going forward. The universe just hasn't put those possibilities in front of me in quite the right way yet.
Hmm.
But I do know that as long as I keep putting out my desires for them,
Hmm.
there will be a path that opens up as to where I can actually achieve that.
So, are you using sort of positive affirmation on a daily basis? Is that what you're saying? On visualization or,
I
using this
do
law
a
of attraction?
I do a lot with law of attraction. I do a lot with visualizations
Hmm.
and just rewriting my thoughts.
Hmm.
I also believe in also combining all of that with physical exercise.
Nice.
I, Cindy, I'm 76 years old.
Oh, look at you. Be proud of you,
I'm
woman.
owning it. And um, my walks are at a minimum 3 miles a day
Wow.
and upwards of 6. And when I go to New York City, I'm good for 18,000 steps for the day between subways and walking. It's
Good.
it's amazing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's my favorite exercise. I'll plug in my earbuds and either listen to a book, listen to a podcast, or crank up the music and just go. And I found, especially on times when I'm having difficulties with family members or people in my life
Hmm.
that are, and I'm having difficulty just changing those thoughts and those feelings, cranking up the music and doing the physical exercise and doing a really brisk, fast walk gets
Hmm.
me into a zone that's almost like meditation. It is
Yes.
a form of meditation.
Hmm.
And then that's where I get very present. And when you become very present,
Hmm.
that's when things open up to you. That's when inspirations happen. And that's when you are able to really totally shift how you feel about a certain situation.
Hmm.
And the other thing about optimism is learning to let go of the past,
Hmm.
learning to let go of people who are no longer supportive of you.
Yes.
And you send them love, you let them go. And that's the end of it.
Yes.
And I've applied those types of things all the way through my life ever since, and I'll do it for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah. I love it. You know, I always share to people that experiment. That's why one of the questions that I always ask guests will be, how do you keep yourself optimistic? Because the moment that you have so many options for you to experience and experiment, you no longer have excuse. You have everything there.
Right.
So why not start? Just start
Exactly.
one at a time. And I love you mentioned about meditation. Meditation can be in a different form, whichever works for you. And I
Mhm.
think many people, and I also would say that we couldn't blame other people when they're listening to the other experts as well, that you must do this, you should do that. But by end of the day, the key here that I want to add is that when you embrace of knowing yourself better and accept that there is formula out there which works for you, so you just have to get yourself curious to experiment. And I love the idea that, just have a brisk walk, or just really do the hit training so you get sweat, and all of those negative thoughts will just like disappear.
They do. Absolutely. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And, sitting in the lotus position and all of that, that's one form of meditation. But anything that gets you into the presence.
Yes.
You can't live in the past, that's gone. You can't live in the future. You don't own that yet. That's
Yes.
not yours. It's the presence. And I know so many people that they will openly admit they're unhappy.
Yeah.
And when I talk with them, I know they're living in the past. They're reliving their past experiences every day.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the way you start your day, that's the way your day is going to be. So being present is unbelievably powerful. And that's when you actually open up to the universe and the
Indeed.
possibilities.
Indeed. Yes. And to wrap up our conversation, for many people that's super, super curious of how they could reach out to you and in what form they could ask, particularly your service, especially in this transition, in terms of gender transition, or even a parents maybe that
Yeah.
looking for assistance, where they can reach you.
MeetWendyCole.com.
Nice.
There's a link to my calendar there, a link to my newsletter, and the bottom link takes you into my website where my blog is, where my podcasts are organized, and everything else about me and what I do is at that website. So
Meet
it's
Wendy.
meet Wendy Cole, COLE.com.
Wonderful. MeetWendyCole.com. And of course, that will be added in the blog and also on the podcast information so people won't miss it out. And Wendy, before I let you go, first is thank you so much for giving me such incredible conversation with you in this present moment. And I have a last question for you that I want to ask is that what advice or message would you give to your younger self?
Be kind to myself.
Mm,
Um, a lot of us, myself included, look back with regret that we didn't do this earlier in our lives. But what I've learned is
mhm,
the time was not right,
mm,
both for society and for me. And there was zero support for it. That didn't happen until this century. And
yeah.
I'm thankful and grateful for my male facsimile or my male representative for not destroying my life,
Yeah.
which can be done in so many ways: alcohol addiction, drug addiction, and of course, suicide.
Yes.
But I made it, I got
Mm,
through. So be kind to yourself and
I love.
realize that the time is not right.
Oh God, that actually speaks to everyone,
Yes,
right?
it does.
So
Absolutely.
thank you.
The book that finishing up one for parents, which I will be publishing this summer.
Ooh.
And I've also started in the winter writing my book.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about transitioning.
Mm-hmm.
It's about my life is the undercurrent through the book, and it's everything I've learned about life and living
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
as a
Mm-hmm.
result of being born transgender.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much once again, Wendy, for this opportunity. It has been a pleasure speaking to you, and I'm really, really grateful. And for people watching or listening right now, that you found this conversation super compelling and you want to know more of what Wendy's providing, just go ahead and follow the meet Wendy Cole at .com. And again, that's going to be provided in our website and our podcast. And in this journey of our busy world, and so much of comparison. And I would just reiterate what Wendy just said. Be kind to yourself and just know if things not happening according to your time, it means that the universe has better time for you. So that means also practice patience and that faith, because we do all deserve all this incredible life that we truly want. There are just so many things that we also have to learn and accept as we continue taking the life that we have right now in the present moment. So thank you so much everyone for watching or listening. Until next time, with yours truly here, Cindy Marie. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Cindy.
From choosing and deciding to show who you truly are as being your authentic you, to be able to serve your higher self to others, to kindness and more. That are just some great insights and wisdom from today's episode with Wendy Cole. Share your thoughts with us. Don't forget to subscribe and follow our podcast. Leave a review to help our show grow. We're here to keep serving you the best we can. Until next time, stay optimistic, stay true to yourself, keep taking action, believe in your ability to make a difference, and you've got what it takes to pursue your dreams and make an impact. Keep going and be unstoppable.